What if Luffy were a revolutionary? From the very beginning of the story, when that little straw hat kid showed up with a face like, I don't get any of this, but I'm loving it, Luffy was always different. But in this reality, in this little alternate world of ours that feels like it's made of recycled dream paper, things started off very differently. Instead of becoming the wild kid who shouted, I'm gonna be king of the pirates from the hilltops, little Luffy's life took another turn. Because, plot twist, Monkey D. Dragon didn't just send dramatic wind gusts from afar. Nope, he actually showed up to get his son. Yep, the head honcho of the revolution came in person with that face like he knows some cosmic secret and said, son, you coming? And Luffy, who had no idea what was going on, as usual, just said yes because he heard the word meet somewhere in the pitch. So off he went, raised in the heart of the revolution, learning early on that the world isn't divided between good guys and bad guys. It's between those with power and those crushed by it. And that, well, that made him pretty pissed off. Luffy grew up around the big names of the revolution. Sabo, Ivankov, Koala, people from all walks of life with stories that could break your heart. He heard about tyrant kings, broken families, towns drained dry by crazy taxes, and even if he didn't get 100% of it, because let's be real, Luffy's still Luffy, he knew one thing for sure, it wasn't fair. So at 17, the rubber kid was sent out into the world, but this time, not floating in a barrel. This was an official mission from his higher-ups. Maybe Koala and Sabo helped plan it. Maybe there was even a pin-covered map and cold pizza on the table. What matters is that one name popped up in the intel reports. Orangetown. Once a peaceful, colorful little place, Orangetown had fallen completely under the control of a certain clown-nosed pirate, Buggy the Bombastic, a loudmouth, half-mad guy with no sense of boundaries. According to the intel the Revolutionary Army received, Buggy and his crew were demanding tribute from the townsfolk, basically weekly bribes with cannon threats, destroying local businesses that didn't comply, using hostages to keep control, including, reportedly, an adorable dog. Koala supposedly said, if we let this slide, it's going to turn into a pirate hub for arms trafficking, or worse, a trading post for the Celestial Dragons. And yeah, that would have been a disaster for the region, because even though East Blue seems calm on the surface, the world government has eyes everywhere, and the revolution needed to keep some zones under the radar or risk blowing the whole thing wide open. That's when Luffy, with a grin wider than Frankie's forehead, said, leave it to me, I'll handle it. My way, off he went. Stretchy, fired up, with a light backpack, a hat blowing in the wind, and a mission in his heart. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Now just imagine, what if no one had gone? What if the revolution ignored the mission? Or if Luffy hadn't made it in time? It would have been a disaster. Buggy was already thinking about expanding, even planning to take over nearby towns. He had a map of the region, kind of crooked, maybe drawn with crayons, and a wild plan to become a regional emperor of chaos, as he called himself. Letting that clown get a foothold would have been bad news, not just for the locals, but for the whole world. Luffy arrives in Orangetown with a mission: spread the revolution. He makes a dramatic entrance, starting with a brawl at the docks and saving an old lady. Nami, who's in town trying to survive and swipe treasure, sees Luffy in a new light. Unlike regular pirates, he doesn't want gold or fame. He wants justice. Realizing what he stands for, she starts to wonder if the Revolutionary Army could help her against the tyrant Arlong. After an epic battle with Buggy, Luffy makes it clear the revolution is here to protect people. He moves on, now with Nami, who starts to see Luffy not as another pirate, but as a possible ally in her own fight. Next stop, Syrup Village, where Luffy uncovers a sinister plan by Kuro to turn the village into a money laundering front for the world government. With his revolutionary energy, Luffy teams up with Usopp, a brave, creative young guy, to take Kuro down. After their victory, the Going Merry is offered to the revolutionary cause, and Usopp decides to join the crew, seeing a chance to fight for something bigger than himself. Then comes the floating restaurant, Barati, where Luffy and his crew face off against Don Krieg, a pirate with dreams of ruling East Blue. The battle's wild, but Luffy wins and helps free the restaurant. Sanji the cook chooses to follow Luffy, not just for the dream of the All Blue, but because he believes in the fight for freedom the revolution represents. But then, Nami, weighed down by pain and the ghosts of her past, leaves the crew and runs off with the Going Merry, leaving just a note behind. Luffy, understanding what drove her, goes after her. Now, fully aware of the tyrant Arlong, a fishman who rules her home, Kokoyashi Village, with the silent support of the world government. Arlong isn't just a local villain, he's a symbol of oppression, racism, and systemic corruption. When Luffy reaches Kokoyashi, he sees the people suffering firsthand. In fighting Arlong, he doesn't just beat a monster, he lands a symbolic blow against the corrupt system propping him up. Nami, finally free, cries not just out of relief, but because someone actually fought for her and her home. The victory in Kokoyashi isn't just a physical liberation, it's a political message. If the world government won't protect the people, The revolution will. The people of Kokoyashi begin rebuilding their lives, and Nami, now resolute, returns to the ship with Luffy and the crew, fully aware of how important it is to fight alongside him to change the world. With Kokoyashi freed and the tide turning in favor of the revolution, the crew set sail for Town, the place where the legendary Gol D. Rogers smiled before he lost his life. A symbolic place. And maybe that's exactly why the Revolutionary Army sent Luffy there, to show that hope isn't backing down. The mission, at least on paper, was simple. Gather intel, make contact with sympathizers hiding in the city, and keep an eye out for any strange marine activity. But of course, this is Luffy we're talking about. He got to the city and went straight to the meat shop. Then, he wanted to climb the execution platform where Roger died. Then, well, you know how he is. The problem was, the government knew he was coming. After what happened in Kokoyashi, eyes started turning toward him. That kid in the straw hat who took down Buggy, Kuro, Krieg, and now Arlong, he wasn't just some random rebel anymore. He was a real threat. Enter Smoker, the gruff, no-nonsense captain made of smoke. He was sent with one goal: capture the kid and put a symbolic end to the rising revolutionary wave in the East Blue. After all, if Luffy were caught in Town, it would be like snuffing out the flame of freedom right where it once shined brightest. Dramatic? Maybe? Strategic? Definitely. The chase is intense. Smoker is strong, focused, and full of tricks. Luffy tries to run, while eating obviously, but he ends up cornered, and then it happens. The wind shifts. The sky darkens. A bolt of lightning strikes the platform, and Dragon appears. Maybe Luffy didn't even know he was nearby. Maybe Dragon had been watching from afar, ready to step in only if needed. But when he sees his son in danger, standing up to the system with fist and heart, he decides, yes, it's time to show the world whose side he's on. Dragon's presence in Town changes everything. Smoker hesitates, the Marines step back, the townspeople whisper, he's here, the leader of the revolution. And in the middle of the chaos, with the wind howling like a roar of freedom, Luffy escapes, but not as just another rebellious kid, as a symbol. The newspapers the next day explode with headlines. Straw Hat Revolutionary faces off against Smoker in Town. Dragon steps enduring East Blue confrontation. New name on global threat list, Monkey D. Luffy. When the going merry began climbing Reverse Mountain, there was no way not to feel that thrill in your gut. Usopp was screaming. Nami gripped the wheel, sweating more than a summer barbecue. Sanji held his cigarette tight and tried to play it cool, and Luffy was laughing. This is awesome. It's like the mountain wants to play with us. Maybe he yelled that, or maybe he was just thinking about grilled fish. But behind the smile, Luffy knew. Entering the Grand Line meant stepping into an even more wounded world. There, the world government's grip was tighter. The oppressed kingdoms were more numerous, and corrupt alliances were the norm. In other words, the perfect place for someone looking to poke the system with a stretchy fist. And their first stop after the watery roller coaster of Reverse Mountain, Laboon, that giant whale with scars bigger than whole ships, constantly ramming its head against a stone wall. Sad, adorable, and fully devoted to a promise of reunion with old friends. In this revolutionary universe, Laboon becomes more than just a lonely creature. He becomes a symbol. When they meet Crocus, the old doctor with antenna-shaped facial hair and a hidden heart, Luffy does something only he could do, convinces the guy to help. How? Simple, with honest words. You stayed here for decades looking after a friend all alone. You know what that means? It means you understand loyalty. So how about helping a bunch of people who are still fighting to reunite with their freedom? Crocus hesitates. He's not big on speeches and doesn't trust easily. But when he sees Luffy's smile, the way he treats Laboon, throwing a party instead of being scared, and hears Nami seriously explaining the Grand Line maps, he agrees. I'm not going with you, but I'll give you the knowledge you need to sail this crazy sea without turning into shipsicles. And just like that, Crocus becomes an ally of the revolution, a distant guy, an old man with a long mustache and sharp eyes that see what really matters. And Laboon? Oh, that whale. Luffy promises he'll come back someday with news from the Rumbar pirates. But more than that, he yells, Laboon, you're strong as hell. Keep hitting that wall, because every time you do, it's a scream of, I'm still here, to the world. And in that moment, the whale becomes a symbol of hope, of resistance, of enduring hit after hit, and still standing strong. After that, the revolution even gets flags with a whale design. But that's a story for another time. Right after that, the crew arrives at Whiskey Peak, where things start sweet and end salty, like a chocolate truffle rolled in BBQ seasoning. The town seems super friendly, with a warm welcome, flowers, good food, Luffy going nuts, of course, and even music. But something's off, way off. Nami's the first to notice. The island's maps are all way too recent. Usopp points out there are barely any kids around. Sanji comments that everyone has that same look like they're hiding a knife under the tray. And then, boom, Baroque Works. This time, Luffy doesn't fall for the act. They'd already gotten intel from the Revolutionary Army that Baroque Works had infiltrated local governments, controlled trade routes through shady deals, and used small islands like this to keep a grip on regional power, all under the orders of some mysterious boss who loved to stay hidden. Igaram and Mr. Nine try the classic "we're the good guys" trick, but it doesn't work. Luffy calls them out, and he's serious. You pretend to help this island, but everything here feels sad. People are smiling out of fear. This isn't peace, it's a prison in disguise, and I don't like that. When the fight breaks out, it's intense. Usopp brings the explosions, Sanji's kicking with fury, Nami's setting traps with pure brains, and Luffy's fighting the way he always does, with heart. In the end, Baroque Works takes a serious hit, and the name Luffy starts showing up in dossiers as more than just Dragon's son. Now, he's a direct problem for Crocodile. Next stop, a dinosaur park called Little Garden. Two giants who've been fighting each other for 100 years. So far, so good, but what no one knew was that Elbaf was slowly being turned into a monitored colony by the world government, who wanted to mine the island's resources and use its warriors as muscle against future uprisings. Dory and Brogy, two stubborn brutes, locked in an endless duel, had no clue, but once Luffy finds out, he's furious. They want to use you as weapons, as shields. You think you're fighting for honor, but they're keeping you here, far from the world, because they're scared of what you represent. And for the first time, the two giants stop, they look at the island, they feel time catch up with them, they see the silent trap, and Luffy, with that impossible to ignore energy, says, you don't have to stop fighting, you just need to know why, and fight on the right side. In the end, they destroy a secret Baroque Works communication base, free the forest from surveillance devices, and make a promise. When Elbaf is free, we'll tell the next generations that a rubber kid opened our eyes. Boom! More giant allies for the revolution. But the tone shifts when the Going Merry docks at Drum Island. This time, the situation's way darker. A whole kingdom frozen in fear. A tyrant named Wapol, who devoured everything. Laws, freedom, even hospitals. He'd run off when pirates attacked, but came back like nothing happened, with new allies and even tighter control. A gourmet dictator with an ego bigger than his appetite. Luffy sees the desperation up close. Houses without doctors, sick kids, people who believe nothing can ever change. And that hits deep. The mission changes. It's not just about survival anymore, it's about liberation. The revolution had tried and failed to establish cells on the island before, but now they see a real chance in Luffy, and he doesn't let them down. If you think you can do whatever you want to your people, let's see if you can take a proper rubber punch, you rotten meat pie. That's when the local uprising begins. Villagers band together. Sanji leads a squad using cooking pans as shields. Usopp invents a bird-based communication system. Nami handles strategy, and Luffy takes on Wapol at the top of Drum. Snow falling, and the revolution's flag waving in the wind. Somewhere in all this, they meet Chopper, a Renaissance doctor in reindeer form with a heart even bigger than his blue nose. He's afraid, insecure, thinks he's a monster. But when he sees Luffy fighting, not for treasure, not for glory, but to help total strangers, he gets it. Maybe I can help heal the world too, one little bit at a time. Wapol loses the throne and his swagger. Drum is reborn as the Sakura Kingdom, with Dalton as leader and cherry blossoms blooming as a symbol of a new beginning. Luffy sails off with a new doctor on board and a clear goal in mind. We're going to Alabasta because more people need help. As soon as the Going Merry hits Alabasta, the heat is so brutal, even Sanji, who never complains, mutters, man, this is too hot for real life. But Luffy's itching to move because he knows this is bigger than buried treasure or pirate games. This is about ending an oppression that's gone on way too long. Princess Vivi, who seemed like a typical royal at first, is right there on the front lines. She doesn't just want things to go back to how they were, and honestly, who would? She wants real change. But she also doesn't want her people caught in the crossfire of a fight made to look like child's play. On the other side, the rebels, not perfect, but united by one mission, freeing the people from suffocating rule. Luffy, who'd grown up hearing from Dragon that adventure isn't enough unless you fight what's wrong, sees it all clearly. Crocodile isn't just a big bad guy. He's the invisible hand of the world government, twisting events from the shadows, a puppet master for those who want to keep the system broken. And this time, Luffy doesn't hesitate. He's not letting this circus continue. If the mission is to spark real change, he's all in. Not to lead alone, but to strengthen a cause that needs a voice. The voice of someone fighting for freedom and justice. During the fight against Crocodile, which was much more than just punches and strategies. It was a clash of ideas and forces. Luffy showed that he wasn't just the son of Dragon, but a guy who took defending the people seriously. Each strike wasn't just against Crocodile's body, but against the rotten structure he represented. When Crocodile was finally brought down, the impact was greater than thunder in the desert. It wasn't just a personal victory, it was a symbolic one, echoing throughout Alabasta and beyond, strengthening the revolution and spreading hope like a strong, hot, and impetuous wind. With the sun still high, the crew felt that this was just the beginning. Alabasta, with its suffering people but huge desire for change, taught a lesson. The revolution isn't made in a day and not by lone heroes. It's made by people who believe, who unite, who fight together. Without wasting time, the Going Merry set sail for Jaya, a noisy island full of people with stories to tell. As soon as they arrived, Luffy felt that the vibe was different. This place had a unique way of mixing laughter with resistance, sarcasm with dreams, like a place where you know life's tough, but no one gives up on being who they are. That's when Bellamy showed up with his mocking smile and attitude, like he loved making fun of anyone who believed in freedom. He never missed a chance to ridicule Luffy and his friends, as if dreaming was something for fools. But Luffy, who's no fool, responded the only way he knew how, with courage, determination, and a smile that said, "You haven't seen anything yet. You can laugh, Bellamy, but what matters is that I'm going to keep fighting, and I'm not alone. And in the end, I'll be the one laughing last." This conversation sparked something that went beyond the physical fight. It was a declaration that Luffy's fighting spirit wasn't just his own, but belonged to the whole revolution, to the people who believe in a better world. Luffy and his crew encounter many situations that challenge them to fight for freedom and justice, always carrying the revolutionary spirit of change with them. Upon reaching Jaya, they hear the story of Noland, a man who believed in grand dreams and in the power to change the world, no matter how big the obstacles. This story inspires the crew, who start seeing Jaya not just as a stop on their journey, but as a symbol of hope, the courage to dream, and the strength born from resistance. In Skypiea, the crew finds an island suspended in the clouds, ruled by the tyrant Enel, a self-proclaimed god who dominates the population with fear and cruel rules. Luffy, with his spirit of freedom, faces Enel and his tyranny, showing that true strength lies in those who believe in the people, not in those who make themselves untouchable. By defeating Enel, Luffy doesn't take his place, but helps the people set up a self-government based on freedom and unity, turning Skypiea from a golden prison into a symbol of change. When the Going Merry reaches Long Ring Longland, the crew is challenged to take part in the Davy Back fight, a game disguised as fun, but actually a trap set by Foxy to force others into submission. Luffy and his crew use more than just physical strength. They show courage, strategy, and determination to win, proving that even in games, the fight for freedom should never stop. In Water 7, the crew finds a city full of work and construction, but also under the control of the world government, which tries to manipulate the workers and their creations. Luffy sides with the local carpenters, supporting their fight for autonomy and the freedom to work. The resistance against the government's control grows stronger, with the crew joining forces to face an oppressive system. The battle here isn't just against visible enemies, but against an authoritarian system trying to hide behind rules and manipulations. When they reach Enies Lobby, Luffy's mission becomes clear: to rescue Robin, a crewmate who represents resistance against the world government. The invasion of Enies Lobby isn't just a rescue mission, it's a declaration of war against the tyrannical system. Each member of the crew brings their unique skills, with Luffy finally positioning himself as a revolutionary willing to face the government head-on. The victory at Enies Lobby isn't just personal for Robin, but a symbolic victory against oppression. This act of rebellion places Luffy at the heart of the fight against the government, making him a symbol of resistance and a target for the world government, which labels him a terrorist. After this battle, the crew moves on to Thriller Bark, where they face the villain Moria, a grotesque being who kidnaps and experiments on people. Luffy and his friends aren't just fighting Moria, but standing against the manipulation and cruelty he represents. It's here that Brook, a skeleton musician who suffered great losses because of tyranny, joins the crew. His story of sadness and resistance brings new energy to the group, symbolizing the fight against oppression and loss. In Sabaody Archipelago, Luffy takes an even bolder step by confronting the Tenryubito, the gods of the sky, figures of absolute power within the world government. Without hesitation, Luffy challenges their authority, starting a chain of confrontations. This audacious act turns Sabaody into a battlefield, with the Navy and the Tenryubito reacting violently to Luffy's rebellion. Throughout these adventures, Luffy and his crew don't just face physical enemies, but challenge and fight systems of oppression, always with the goal of freeing the oppressed and creating a more just world. With each victory, Luffy's crew grows stronger, and becomes a symbol of resistance against the world government, knowing their mission is bigger than just searching for treasure. It's an ongoing revolution. Even in the midst of chaos, Luffy never lost the essence that made him unique. He didn't just fight his enemies physically, he also challenged ideas and the power structures. The clash was a real battle of ideals, where the resistance was as strong as the blows they dealt. Despite all the adversity, Luffy never stopped joking with his friends, teasing Zoro, making jokes with Usopp, and showing how much his friendship with the crew was the fuel that kept him from giving up. This was a moment that showed the world that the revolution was about to take on a much larger scale. After this battle, the crew was separated, each facing their own path, but all with the certainty that the fight was far from over. Amazon Lily was Luffy's next destination, and there he found an unexpected scene. The island, ruled by the warrior women of the Kuja tribe, was deeply entangled in the claws of the world government, with Empress Boa Hancock being a prisoner disguised as a queen, submissive to the celestial dragons. Luffy, as always, wasn't there to cause conflict, but to spark change. His loyal demeanor and his simple, yet powerful words touched Hancock and the Kuja people. Together, they began to think of ways to free the island from the oppressive control of the government, starting a partnership that would become essential to the revolution. In Impel Down, Luffy not only invaded the prison to rescue his brother Ace, but also to confront the unjust system that imprisoned all those who opposed the government. His action was not just a jailbreak, but a cry of revolt. By doing this, Luffy not only freed Ace, but many other political prisoners, gaining unexpected allies, all with stories of struggle and resistance. Each one became part of the larger fight, a symbol that the oppressive system needed to be overthrown. The invasion was marked by Luffy's irreverence, always laughing in the face of danger, but also by his conviction that the fight for freedom could not be lost. Arriving at Marineford was a moment of extreme tension. The battle for Ace's life was not just a family struggle for Luffy, but an opportunity to show the world that the resistance was stronger than ever. Marineford became the stage for a war between the oppressors of the world government and those who wanted freedom. Luffy's courage and determination stood out in this chaotic scene, where he was not only fighting to save Ace, but to raise the flag that the system was on the brink of collapse. After the war in Marineford, Luffy emerged as a true leader, certain that his fight wasn't just about him, but about a future where freedom was accessible to all. The impact of his actions spread worldwide, giving life to the Revolutionary Army and reigniting the flame of resistance. It was no longer just about pirates and treasures, but a true revolution challenging an oppressive system. When the crew reunited at Sabaody, the tone was different. Now, they were more than just pirates. They were revolutionaries in training, ready to sabotage the world government, liberate islands, and fight against tyranny. The Going Merry, which had already been a symbol of the crew's unity, became their base of operations, where they trained for bigger challenges, learning not just to fight, but to think strategically and even infiltrate, because the revolution wasn't just about brute force, but also intelligence and strategic allies. The battle for Fishman Island was another turning point. There, Luffy faced not only the villain Hody Jones, but the racial oppression system that had been imposed by the world government. Luffy became the defender of the Fishman people and joined the fight for racial equality, toppling a villain that represented oppression. Once again, Luffy wasn't just fighting an enemy, but a system that divided, segregated, and oppressed. In Punk Hazard, Luffy faced the mad scientist Caesar Clown, who was conducting cruel experiments on children. The crew's mission was to dismantle the lab and free the children, once again showing that Luffy's revolution wasn't only about physical battle, but about protection and justice. Arriving in Dressrosa, Luffy confronted Doflamingo, a tyrant who controlled the island through manipulation and fear. With the arrival of Sabo, Luffy's adopted brother, and a new reinforcement in the revolution, the battle was not just a physical confrontation, but an ideological war. Luffy and his friends led the people against Doflamingo, proving that when the people unite, nothing can stop them. In Zoo, Luffy formed an alliance with the Minks, a warrior race with a history of resistance. Together, they swore to fight the world government and free Wano, a land dominated by the Yonkou. The alliance was marked by mutual respect, trust, and above all, the belief that unity would make the revolution prevail. Luffy, with his unwavering determination and infectious smile, was not just the captain of a crew, but the leader of a global movement. His journey from a simple pirate to a symbol of resistance has shown that a dream of freedom can unite even the most distant hearts. He is the embodiment of a revolution that will never back down, always seeking a future where friendship, freedom, and equality prevail above any oppression. Wano is an island marked by deep samurai traditions, yet immersed in chaos and oppression. Under the rule of Kaido, the king of beasts, and Shogun Orochi, Wano became a prison where the people, suffocated by an authoritarian system, had lost all hope of ever being free. The traditions were so intense that even the wind itself seemed to carry the weight of the centuries, while freedom had become an empty word. The island found itself in a state of stagnation, with the sunlight barely reaching its soil. Such was the darkness imposed by these rulers' tyranny. Then, Luffy arrives, but not as the pirate we know, but as a revolutionary force. Trained by the Revolutionary Army since his youth, Luffy knew his mission would not just be about breaking chains, but illuminating the path for a complete revolution. Moreover, he possessed the Sun Fruit, a unique ability that, in the original context, would be revealed later, but in this scenario, grants Luffy maximum power, making him the chosen sun god. He not only carried immense energy, but also a colossal responsibility. It was not just a fight against oppressors, but a fight for the complete transformation of society. Upon arriving in Wano, Luffy feels the weight of the land. The ground seems to cry out for change, yearning for someone who could bring light to this darkness. Luffy begins to connect with the samurais, who still hold a deep pride for their land and values, even though they've been forced to live in the shadows, either under Orochi's rule or hiding to avoid the regime's wrath. He also joins the Minks, warriors with a free and untamed spirit who could no longer accept Kaido's oppression. Together, they form an alliance that goes beyond a military pact. It is a bond of hope, a commitment to reignite the flame of revolution and fight for a free and just future. But of course, the fight against Kaido was never going to be easy. Kaido isn't just any enemy. He's a force of nature, a massive monster who rules the island with overwhelming, almost godlike physical power. Facing Kaido and his subordinates isn't just a matter of brute strength, but of relentless endurance and sharp strategy. Each battle felt like trying to stop a storm with a candle. The enemies were many and powerful, and the odds of victory seemed slim. But Luffy, with the strength of his spirit and his vision of freedom, never backs down. The key to defeating Kaido lies in the power of the Sun Fruit. Rather than just boosting his physical might or unleashing devastating attacks, Luffy begins to awaken the true essence of this unique ability. His light isn't just physical, it's transcendent. It amplifies his haki, lifts the morale of his allies, and weakens his enemies. Luffy starts to radiate an energy that inspires and ignites the hearts of everyone around him. His presence becomes a transformative force, as if the sun itself were shining through him, dispersing the shadows over Wano and reigniting the people's hope. The impact of his energy is immediate, and those who were on the brink of defeat feel reinvigorated to keep fighting. The revolution in Wano isn't just about military clashes, it's a revolution of identity and culture. Alongside the samurai and the minks, Luffy doesn't just fight the oppressors, he helps the people reclaim their essence, their honor, and the courage to stand up for what's right. He becomes more than a military leader. He becomes a symbol. His light-hearted nature, unshakable determination, and his ability to make others believe in freedom even when all seems lost, unite the people of Wano into a powerful force. Luffy is seen not just as a warrior, but as a beacon of hope who proves that freedom isn't impossible. It's something that can be won through courage, unity, and spirit. When the day of the final battle arrives, the tension in Wano is thick. Kaido, the island's black sun, with his monstrous strength, seemed ready to swallow everything whole. Yet Luffy, with the full power of his Sun Fruit and his blazing conqueror's haki, prepares to prove that light always finds a way to shine, no matter how intense the darkness. When he launches his final attack, Luffy doesn't just strike Kaido with a physical blow, he unleashes a burst of freedom, a rallying cry for the people to rise up and take control of their destiny. The battle between Luffy and Kaido shook Wano from north to south, but what truly toppled the tyrant wasn't just the force of Luffy's attack, it was the uprising and unity of the people of Wano, inspired by his leadership. When Kaido falls, it's not just the defeat of one man, it's the collapse of an entire system. The victory doesn't belong solely to the chosen sun god, but to the strength of the people who finally found the courage to rebel against tyranny and claim their freedom. In the end, Wano doesn't return to its former state of oppression and imprisonment. It becomes a symbol of rebirth, an island that, through struggle and revolution, breaks free from the chains of its past. Luffy's power as the sun god wasn't just in his physical strength, but in the flame of hope he lit in the hearts of those who believed a better world was possible. Wano becomes a beacon of freedom, showing that light can shine even in the darkest of places, and that freedom is a victory won through unity and the fight for a more just future.